Welcome to In Conversation With, my new series where I get to talk to my favorite artists, esotericists, writers, organizers, spiritual and creative workers, and people who I think are doing really interesting shit in the world. I'm your host, Shane the Catskills, a queer artist, tarotist, intuition facilitator, pleasure activist, organizer, contemplative, and library clerk, living on a Esopus land currently known as the town of Shandaken, Ulster County in New York's Catskill Mountains. It is my utter delight today to be in conversation with Elizabethanne Spiotta. Elizabethanne is a chaplain, a spiritual caregiver, a widow, a mother, and she loves to walk. She's studying the Somatic Experiencing model of addressing grief and trauma as they arise in the body. Elizabethanne works one-on-one with clients where sessions consist of walking and talking, an approach based on the idea that movement is change. Walking while exploring the relationship with grief and trauma offers new perspectives, ideas, and curiosity. Everything shifts when we move. We have the chance to feel differently about what's in front of us, moving forward, moving along. Elizabethanne also leads grief groups and disordered eating groups. She is located in the Hudson Valley, but is also available for one-on-one and group sessions via Zoom. Welcome to you, Elizabethanne. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thanks, Shay. It's really nice to talk with you.
So why don't we just land in this space together and just check in. How are you arriving? How is the condition of your body, heart, mind in this moment?
Well, I'm more nervous than I expected myself to be, but I'm going to hold that lightly and feel it more as energy than anything more specific than that. I'm outside on this September day. Oops. Which is pretty amazing because it's like the best of this summer that we've had so far, with a little bit of fall sprinkled in. All the birds are super active and everything's still really green. So my heart's a little soft, maybe a little mushy, but everything is good. How are you?
Thank you for sharing all of that. We are in very close proximity in terms of our location. And so I am also experiencing this. Yeah, I feel really affected by the season, like this particular time of year, the quality of light, the angle when the sun starts to go down, it's like an extended golden hour or something. It's very poignant, very back to school, very I don't know. It just always brings up a lot of poignancy. Yeah. So I'm definitely feeling that too. And I'm really excited to talk to you. I was really glad that you agreed to be in conversation. And I want to talk to you about your work. But first, I want to talk about how we know each other and how we met.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of do I remember a particular moment when I met you? And I couldn't think of a particular moment, except the thing that I was thinking about was were all three of your boys born when I met you? And I feel like the answer to that was yes. I don't think I knew you before Cosmo was born.
I think you're right, because we met at the monastery, and I know I was really heavily involved with Zen Kids, helping to run that a little bit as a lay practitioner, and then also there to help raise my family, in many ways. So yeah, I think what comes to mind for me is the dining hall, the stairs that came down, and sort of what I felt like I was cornering you at the bottom between the kitchen and the stairs. Will you just talk to me for a second and spend some time with me, because the boys were running around and I had all of these questions about practice, and it felt like you sat down on maybe the hearth there, or maybe on the bottom step. And it felt like your body just relaxed and literally opened up. And I just kind of went inside and sat down, and we just talked for a little bit. It was a very safe and welcoming, beginning. That's how I remember us meeting.
Mm. I love that story. I feel like I can call up the feeling of connecting with you like that, because I feel like it's still like that. Like when we run into each other at the grocery store, and I feel like we have one of those relationships where we kind of move in and out of each other's lives. There can be like a long period of time where we're not connected, and then we like run into each other at the grocery store and we get reconnected. I feel like it's been like that kind of all along. But we've known each other for, well,
14 years.
yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. So that is how we know each other. I mean, to put it extremely briefly, I feel like there's so much more we could say. But
Well,
no,
we've done so many things within that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We've done, that's just one place, but I think one of the things I love about our friendship is that we've allowed all of these other streams to come in and just join. That's how we find each other, I think.
I feel like we find each other at like pivotal moments in each other's lives.
Yeah, thank Goddess for that.
Oh my God, I agree. I agree. So I wanted to talk to you about your work because just to give a little context, there was a gap of 5 months where I moved out of this house and was living elsewhere while my former housemate, Mary, was dying in this house. She asked me to move out so she could be in the house. And so I moved a few miles away. And that is when you and I kind of got back in touch and started working together, doing this grief walking work. I knew that you did this work, and somehow at that particular moment in my life, it felt like the right time. I was again living right next to the monastery. This was a very unexpected move. It was sort of like, returning to living so close to the monastery is like returning to the scene of a crime. Not really, but like it was a lot to be like, to smell breakfast coming out of the kitchen when I was like on my morning walk. So all that to say, like, I got in touch with you to kind of do some of this. It felt like a good time to do some grief work for me for various reasons. That's a whole other thing about like, I thought I understood what I was up to, but as it turns out. And then, so we worked together during this 5 months between when I wasn't living in this house. And we met up for walks and we talked on the phone times when the weather wasn't right for us to meet up. But, I had a very particular experience working with you. And I would just love to hear about, or for you to talk about how you came to this particular form of spiritual accompaniment work.
Oh, spiritual accompaniment. That's one I have to remember. That feels so cozy in my brain. Well, I was thinking about this morning, and I guess just like our friendship, there's been all these different streams that have come in, and I feel now like I'm in my own river. I'm really just in my place flowing. So I came to this work when my father was dying almost 20 years ago. And he had died. We were in the hospital room. My mother was there. My sister was there. And something happened in the space where we weren't allowed to be in our bodies so much, right? He had just left his body. We were all stunned. And I felt everyone as a spiritual being. I felt something left, and so that something could arrive or something had access. And in that moment, I thought, I don't know what to call this or what's happening, but this is how I want to see and know people. I want to tease this out, and I want to talk about this. So I ended up studying chaplaincy work, which I didn't even know what that was, but I kept poking around trying to find how to be in conversation with people. And I went to the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, which was a life-changing experience. And as I was doing that, I was doing clinicals in Manhattan and coming up to, to the Hudson Valley. I had 3 sons, and my husband was alive. And then I finished the chaplaincy training, and a year's time later, he suddenly died. And so all of this work that I had been doing, I mean, there's so much about that, but all of the work I had been doing was no longer an idea or me trying to put myself into that place again. That was what was handed to me to be, and I had the skill to relate to everybody in this way that served me and kept me connected to everyone, so that it wasn't this thing that happened or this other time. That was, part of my life, and how I was going to raise the boys was through this spiritual lens. And then, I come from a very lovely, healthy, not healthy history of being an anorexic. I would say like I was the best, top of my class for being an anorexic. So I had a really fucked up relationship with my body. And when all this stressful shit started to happen, I needed to figure out how to get back in it. And a friend of mine, this female friend of mine that I knew softly, a little bit in the world, is a personal trainer. She approached me and said, I'd like to help you, in whatever way I can. This is my skill. This is my offering to the world. Maybe we can be together in that. And she helped me get back in my body. And I learned how to run. I learned how to lift weights. I learned how to walk, like how to walk without, for my hips and for my back and all of this. And through all of that, I just kept showing up, and she held this wonderful space. And I think she really helped me save my own life and show up in my life in the best way that I can. So that led me to studying the somatic experiencing. Like, how does one stay in the body, and how do I don't want to think about it all and keep it above, my neck. I want to know what's going on. This is where all the important stuff is. So, I'm in my last year of studying that and trying to stay as related as I can to human beings who are in the gift of grief, which is a hard thing to say, but, if we're blessed enough, we can see that. I feel, we can experience that, and we experience it together. The intimacy of that. So, making the most of being a human in this way, this feels like the way to do it.
I love all of that. And it was like I felt myself dipping in, like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know, to hear you kind of tell it so beautifully in that way. And also just really noticing like the breadcrumb nature of it, like this thing led to this thing, led to this thing, I very relate to that from my own very different experiences. The gift of grief is, it's an interesting phrase. And when you were talking about, how did you say it when you were finishing up? Something about like the gift of being a human being. Is that how you put it?
I think so. Yeah. This opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. This opportunity to like live this human life. I was going to ask you like, how would you define grief? But in a way, I feel like it all, I don't know. I mean, I would love for you to like tell me how you define it, but also there's something about like the gift of being a human being that feels related to grief to me. But, how do you, I don't want to be like define it, but just like, what is it?
Well, I think it's a discussion. I don't know if there is a definition for it. I mean, it changes for me every day. Like when we were talking about how it feels in this moment right now and how we're related to our natural environment, I thought when I was thinking about that this morning, like, I have so much melancholy because I know if I'm lucky, I know what's coming, and I know what's coming. I know all of the change, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And how sad I am that all of this green, which is like a language to me, all of these colors is just its own conversation, that's going to disappear. But in the same moment that there's a sadness about that, there's such appreciation for it. I don't think any of these things are separate. I don't know. Sometimes language really starts to collapse for me when I start to think about it. It's like, are we talking about the same word for all of these funky things? You know, and then I have to expand it open again. If it's just a play, you know, just a game.
Totally. Totally. And that's something that I remember from our work together was kind of like playing with language and opening words up. And because I'm a very heady person for sure, very like quick mind and can get lost in the language. And so I just kind of remember like picking apart, like you kind of met me in that place and was like, let's dig around here and like see what this is. It also, you know, when you were talking about how, you know, it makes me think of this thing I heard Alta Starr, who's an organizer and a longtime tarotist, say that grief is the coin we pay for loving others. And I was like, yes. And when you were just talking about it just now, it's like, you know, grief is like dancing with impermanence.
Yeah.
It's just like being in this very like erotic relationship with impermanence, you know, with like change.
Yeah. That's so well said, because it is so intimate and it's so hot in that it's nothing is more alive than that, right? So yeah, it's funky, but you know, it holds my curiosity, and I think it really holds my existence.
Can you say more about that?
I think I just understand why I'm here, and I understand why I have relationships, and I understand what it means to be in a relationship, and the ones I don't want to be in, and the ways I don't want to be in my life, you know. And it also really helped me move out of my own way, you know. And I'm experiencing another fold of that now as my children are growing up and leaving. I just have to watch. I have to watch them do their thing. Like, you know, I have to watch life be different than I expected it to be. Even though, right? Because there's always that haunting, like we all know that we're all going to die. It's what we have in common. And we all know if you're lucky, you raise the kids and they go, you know, you raise them to leave.
I know it means like, you know, that like, you know, you kind of did it, you know?
Yeah. Good job. They left, you know? So I don't know. I feel like I'm getting off track, but just, there's a gift. There's a gift. I have such a more intimate and different relationship with Jason now that nobody else has. There's nothing else about it. It's just juicy and it's mine.
And Jason is your husband who died
yep.
8 years ago now.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you want to say more about that, about how your relationship with Jason has, you know, evolved in this time?
I never really talk about it just because it feels like it's a dream, and that I'll just beat it up if I try to explain it to someone, and it feels really precious. But that I'll say that I had to work hard. I had to feel harder to find him, and the equity in that and the integrity in that is really good. It feels really good. Yeah, I think that's it about that.
Thank you for all of that, the part that you said, and thank you for all the part that you didn't say. That's also a very potent response, actually. So I would love to like talk a little bit about grief working, grief walking and grief working, actually, like what it is, how it works, how you came to this particular form or format to do the work. And just like the role that movement plays, and like who is it for, And what does it do?
Right. I came to it because, and maybe you've had experiences like this. My friendships, the ones that were a little further away or the ones that were really close and consistent, started to change a little bit. Not 100%, but a number of them where and I walk with my friends, I should start to say, we don't really meet for a coffee so much as we meet to walk, just naturally. But the quality of the conversations and the content was beginning to shift in this way where I felt that I needed to be the listener more than the speaker. And what my friends were bringing to me, and then what acquaintances began to bring to me, was asking me questions about my experience with grief and loss. And their question was a permission for them to tell me about theirs. I realized. And so I really enjoyed doing that. But at the end of it, I was like, I wanted to kind of follow up. I wanted to, hand something back. I wanted it to be more of I could feel the relationship possibly changing. So I just started to look at that, and certainly wasn't practicing with my friends or anything like that, but just deciphering what was going on and how I wanted to maybe move that out and call it something different so that it could be more respected. We could really talk and honor this grief walking that we were doing, and that we would start, we would name what we were doing, and we would breathe and pace ourselves to walk together. Notice how we were walking, if we're getting faster or slowing down, and then just maybe stopping and asking what's going on in the body. Can you feel your feet, or are you just going? Are you breathing? All of those real gentle, basic things. But moving gives us a way to not just be telling stories or trying to figure it out. There's so much about trying to figure something out or be okay with something or move on or all that bullshit that we got to, I think this is where the intimacy part was. We got to know it and really feel it. And that I had the complete honor of witnessing that with someone. And, doing it in the luxurious freaking Catskill Mountains, on this rail trail or on these streets, that don't even have lines down the middle of them. Like, we can walk and ebb and flow, the whole way. It's just like this beautiful ribbon that was laid out in front of us to do the good work, feeling.
Yeah, like being witnessed by the land. There's something about this. I mean, there's a reason there's like a bunch of monasteries and whatever up here. It's like the land is very powerful. I'm struck by several things about what you said. One was I also had the experience when you and I worked together of really appreciating the body being brought in. Cause, like I said, I'm one of those people who's like, can you feel your feet or are you just going? It's like, hello, that's me. So that was really helpful for me. The work is so much more like connected. And I feel like if I can't articulate in language, if I can't explain, it's very disconcerting. And yet this is what, working with grief as like a full body, heart, mind experience like requires. The other thing that I was struck by is, you were talking about like putting the work out, like making it sort of giving it a container, making it, sacred, and also like acknowledging it as labor. I just want to like, as a spiritual and creative worker, especially as someone who is a monk, it's normal for people to just come up and start talking to me. I mean, not anymore. People will be like, she's so rude. She doesn't even like stay. And I'm like, I don't stay to talk because, and in a way, I mean, I'm not saying you feel this way, but there can be a way that like people coming to you for spiritual counsel, they might not even consciously like think they're doing that, but there is a kind of labor involved, a kind of work that draws on your alchemizing your experience and being able to articulate it, to hold it for someone else that, so I just think there's something about that, about making the shift toward practicing something to offering it as work in the world that is, has certain parameters and boundaries and, you get paid for, or there's an exchange for,
Right.
because it's labor. Do you see it that way, or am I kind of projecting my own?
No, thank you for that. I mean, in all transparency, you helped me language that for myself and to step into that fully. And I guess now, as I hear you talk about it, yeah, maybe I was even a little uncomfortable, maybe a little moving towards resentment that I hadn't yet put it in a container and said, these conversations and this work is really important. So we have to put it over here and call it this. It doesn't mean we can't engage in it, because I think what conversation isn't necessarily about
Yeah.
grief and way, I mean, as we
Yes.
love our work, what painter isn't always seeing everything as an opportunity or a canvas, all of that, right? But you're right. I think it's about reverence, and it's about paying the bills.
Totally. Yeah.
But this is really important. So, like, let's take it seriously.
Yeah. It's like, what value do you place on someone creating a container for you to be intimate with your experience of life and death and loss and impermanence? And I think that there is a way that it's like, well, that's, you can't put a price on that. But in living under capitalism, we must, because some of us have to pay the bills. So, and I think that spiritual and creative work, and work that's typically done by people who are socialized as women, is just devalued across the board. And so if we don't value our work, who's going to? And also, as I feel like we could have had a series of conversations during that time I was living at the cottage, that weren't grief walking, that weren't like in the container, but it was such a relief for me as the person paying. There's a relief. It's like, I don't need to take care of Elizabethanne right now. I don't need to it's like, this is my time that we've, set aside for this. And I can take my hands off the wheel, which is something that's hard for me to do, and like let someone else drive and kind of and to me, there's so much value in that. Especially as someone who holds space for other people, it's very clarifying to have a clear container. So just appreciating, all of that. And I was really struck. Can I tell a story from that's about me, from one of our sessions?
Yes. And then I want to mention something else, but yes,
Oh, no,
please
you
do.
go first and then I'll go, please.
Just that idea of the container, because so many of us are afraid to feel all of those feelings. We might not never get out of them. What if I cry forever? Like, there are still things about Jason that I have not let myself feel. I know what they are, and hasn't felt safe enough to do that. But that by creating this container, I honor what we're doing and the hard work that you're stepping into to feel all this, and I will place you down gently, and we will tie up as many of the loose strings as we can, so that now, that you can walk through the rest of your day, right? Like, maybe holding some of the fear, or holding some of that, sometimes literally holding people when they have to let their bodies go so they can feel all of that and moan it out, and weep it out. That then they're not going to get lost in that and not return from that. That's all I wanted to say. But
that's all. I feel like that's so important, because it's, someone might be like, well, holding a container, like, what is that, keeping the time or whatever. And it's like, the person holding the container, you in this instance, is like, I'm going to let something come apart. I'm going to create the conditions where something can come apart. And I'm also creating the conditions where I am going to, I'm not necessarily going to put it all back together. And like, I know that you have to function after this session. And like, I know how to facilitate that transition.
Right.
Like that's not, just to, I really appreciate you kind of putting a fine point and fleshing out, like, what does it mean to hold a container for someone's grief work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really critical,
Yeah.
that it's someone who actually has some training and has some, skill and experience, understanding what all of that is.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Tell me your story. I can't wait to hear what
Well,
you're about to say.
I wanted to sort of, there was this, I don't know if this will even make sense to people. Maybe it's too decontextualized because I'm not going to like talk about a bunch of details, but there was a metaphor that you gave me when we started working together. And it was about like a collapsible house, like a house where the walls can like lower down and then, but like they're on a string. So you can pull them up if you want to, because, containment has been a sort of theme in my life, is that containment makes me feel safe. I mean, I feel like that's why I was like at the I mean, that's not why I was at the monastery, but it definitely made it make sense. And, there was something about being contained. And I feel like it was in that metaphor that you gave me that I started working with, sort of metaphors of expansion and space and opening and, not pushing against something all the time.
Right.
And that, has been extremely powerful. And in a way, I feel like, a lot of the work that we did and what I really appreciate about the work is like, I would say, this is what I think is going on. And you would just kind of like zoom out or like move the lens a little bit and be like, oh God, like, because I the need to control is at such a sort of subliminal level that even in my spiritual work, I'll try, that's why it's so helpful for me to have an interlocutor or a practitioner, someone who's, helping me. That's spiritual accompaniment is very helpful. But, the thing that I thought I was grieving often was just like the front for like the thing that was behind it. And just, I feel like you gave me sort of a way of just like the way I kind of feel it in my body is sort of like you being like, maybe it's this, just that feeling of like, okay. And, it was this beautiful affirmation, but like
Mm.
an immediate sort of opening up of like, and what else? And that's also been really helpful. And I feel like I'm curious to hear you sort of talk about, I just think about, I've had all of these sort of losses over the last several years, some of which I
Yes.
chose, some of which I did not choose, like, you know, and how incomparable people's losses are. Like, it's just, it's such a weird thing. And just the magnitude of our collective and cultural losses at this time, like that, and a culture that doesn't give us any time to actually feel that or even acknowledge,
Yeah.
like at a cultural level, that like over 1 million people from COVID, like, habitat that's going to support life as we know it, like all of these things. And just kind of all of the different kind of entry points. Loss is sort of an entry point into
Mhm.
grief work, but I think also like things other than loss, like getting what you want and finding that you're not satisfied, or getting what you want and finding that you're terrified, or, all of the different ways that, you know, uh, yeah, I mean, I've been a little all over the place, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about any of the things that I've just said. Not like an answer to a question, but just what it makes you think of.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I love it. This is great. Yeah, I was thinking about that today too. Like, you know, the loss. And what's been striking me recently is, let me see if I can explain this well. I'm just in a place in my life right now where I'm a little confused about, what I want to be studying, what I want to be reading, what I want to be eating, what feels good in my body. Like everything's just might be a seasonal thing. I'm not sure, but I'm just kind of, and how confusion or not knowing or the interruption that not knowing gives me, because I think I know, is its own sadness and is a loss, like, and I mean, this is different than what you were saying, but I guess I'm just finding my way into why do I, where is that loss and that grief, and kind of losing my train of thought. But I think your idea about our culture not giving us our side of the world, not giving us opportunity to even like take a deep breath. We're all just hyperventilating. We're on hyperventilation speed with information, with unimaginably imaginable fucking catastrophic climate situations, real problems, real like deaths, and no, we're not. I don't know how to feel into all of it. It feels isolating to feel into it sometimes. Like where's the crying wall for like this whole entire experience, and there's so much activism. I know how involved you are in change and in advocacy and in raising your voice so that people can hear you, and people, you have a very unique way of showing up in the world and saying what needs to be said. And you're talking to very specific other powerful people, right? So you're creating this web of acknowledgement and of spiritual care in your own way. And where are the other places that we can do that? We can join, sort of do that in the way of emotion.
I'm like, what if we had a wailing wall in Boyceville?
Yeah.
Like, I'm serious.
I know, I'm thinking about it too now. We do always find something to create when we talk to each other, don't we? It always kind of pulls us towards like, let's make this thing. And it's not an organizing thing. It's usually like, let's make art.
Yeah.
Like, let's go out. You get the cement, I'll get whatever.
I mean, I feel like spiritual work, grief work, political work is all very, very creative and is about making things, I think that there's a tendency, I definitely have it, to kind of just want to understand and kind of think about it or talk about it. And I love all of those things. And I do a lot of that. And making the things that we want to see in the world. Like when you said that, like, why isn't there a wailing wall? I'm like, why isn't there? If there was a wall that I could drive to and just like yell. Okay. Yeah. We're going to bookmark that and talk about that, because I feel like who's writing the grant for that project? I'm like, yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
I also love what you were saying about like these moments of, you got to this really micro level of like being of confusion as this like micro grief of like being separated from like, wait, what am I doing? It's like, yeah, confusion is almost like a confusion, that sense or disorientation, or these like little micro portals into like feeling something other than just the like that sort of speed of hyperventilation. I felt that like in my whole body when you said that, like actually,
Yeah, I think in some ways that's really happening. I think now that we're talking about it, it feels like that place of confusion, maybe it's also just the reset button. Like, right?
Yes.
Something has glitched and it's either standing still and you're frozen, or it's going back and forth so fast that you have to just turn off the Wi-Fi and start again. Maybe the confusion doesn't deserve my curiosity as much as pausing and just starting again. I mean, and how do you start again? I don't know, but right, maybe the energy isn't in the confusion.
Like the confusion, the experience of confusion is like the dashboard indicator light that like, we need to like lie down or breathe or whatever. Get off automatic pilot, maybe, whatever it is.
Right.
So like someone's sitting out there listening to us talk and is like, is this for me? Like, is this grief walking thing? Is this, my life doesn't, I haven't had any big, talk to that person and just
Mm.
like tell them, like, who is this for?
Right. So I'm really jazzed by that kind of conversation because I think the small, I was working for a harm reduction community in a harm reduction community for a little bit, which was great work because it was unfortunately, or very fortunately, because people were living their lives authentically, it was full of grief. But it was the grieving that is hard to name. So there's all this language around that. But it's the things like maybe this person is feeling funky and has a grief because you know, family relationships aren't what they thought they were going to be. And so there's confusion or contemplation around like what am I going to do on Thanksgiving? Because I thought that this was going to be the way it was, but I don't know if I want to show up anymore. I don't know what I want to do there, right? Or there's things like, losing a job, those kinds of more maybe community oriented or what's the word? I'm missing the word. How we define ourselves in our
Identity
place.
oriented.
Yes, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Our identity oriented losses. I'm really curious with bring it back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. How are people getting on in these days without being so fucking grief stricken that we're all not like peeing our pants or just eating chocolate? Like I want to have conversations with people like it doesn't have to be about a thing. It can be like and it's not pathological. Yes, let's go talk about it. And then we can stop talking about we can give it its respect. Let's spend some time feeling this and relating to somebody. We're not alone in it.
Hmm.
Right. I think that's what I would love to have people understand is that it's so normal and it's so loving to give attention to these things that are hard and that we're all feeling. I need to talk to people about that stuff and not feel funky about asking for that care or that time. And to your point about it being creative, like something naturally, of course, something creative comes from something that's dying or the conversation of something ending, something begins, right? So it's time to regenerate a lot of that too. And I wonder if that's also what gets lost when we're in this hyperventilation. We don't get to move it towards what's growing, what can grow.
I love all of that. It's
Mm.
like, uh, as far as the creativity, like the closer you get to aliveness, which is, I think, what grief work
Yep.
does, is gets you to not just the sad things, but the exciting things, the terrifying things, the,
Yeah.
you know, hot things, all of the things.
Opportunities. Yeah.
Yes. That the closer one gets to aliveness, the more in touch with one's creative impulses one is. So I think that
Mm.
this kind of work can actually put one back in touch with creativity. And I just love what you're saying about like, I want to talk to that person who thinks this isn't for them. And I want to, or who isn't sure if it's for them, or I want to talk to the person who can't feel anything, because if
Yeah.
they did, they would lose, like, how is any of us managing right now? Like, if we could actually feel everything, none of us would be able to function. So
Right.
we come by that numbness, honestly. And I think, you know, spiritual accompaniment in this particular way can help open those places, you know, uh, where you're not doing it alone, where the opening of it is within a relationship that can create intimacy and a sense of, feeling held in it. Um, so I just think that that's really, to like have the conversation about all the things I'm doing to keep from feeling all of the things that are
Yeah.
like waiting. So I just love that you're kind of like, yeah, wherever you are,
Yeah.
like like let me meet you there. I think that's, incredible. Yeah. We're going to get to the quick fire round in a moment. I just want to let people know that there's a link in the episode notes for this episode to Elizabethanne's website, you could read more about her work and reach out to her about doing grief walking or grief work remotely via Zoom. Are you ready to move on to the quick fire round? Is there anything else that you want to say about your work? I mean, yeah, at this moment.
No, this is so much fun. I can't believe I was nervous. I mean, but I feel the nervousness now is really was so much excitement. So no, this is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Here's to, is it nervousness or excitement? That's such a that's such a place. Okay, so the quick fire round is where Elizabeth and Anna and I are going to toss the ball back and forth in terms of answering these questions. And so you can tell me whether you want to go first or not. What are you practicing right now?
I am practicing the idea that rituals are not something that I'm applying to myself, but if I'm quiet enough, they are just arriving. So I'm leaning into the rituals that are already who I am, and then raising them up.
Do you have any for examples, or does it feel private?
Well, I mean, I have a silly example, which is what made me notice it. I just noticed that every morning I wake up, I make this certain coffee. I knew that was a ritual piece, but then I noticed myself feeding the dog and then feeding the cats and then going to the chickens. And then I would like find myself sitting on the bench in the chicken yard, just looking at them. And it's like, oh, these are my rituals. These are the people I want to be, the animals, the beings that I want to be with. And I seem to be doing it every day. So now I'm going to name it something. And I'm looking forward to it. And it's become this thing that I just keep, kind of looking forward to. Otherwise, I was just asleep at the wheel. So that to me is how ritual and practice is showing up. How about you?
I love that. I'm practicing my relationship with my cat.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a fantasy that I would end up with a cat that was like a lap cat and a snuggler. And, I was on a Zoom earlier with a comrade whose cat was like right on her chest. And I was like, why can't my cat do that? But that's not how she is. She's, as anyone who has cats knows, cats are themselves and they don't really care what you want. And she has her ways of showing attention and affection toward me. And it involves, she won't do any of that unless I am on the floor with her. Like she's such a top, you know what I mean? She's such a
Yes.
like I got to get down on the floor and I have bruises like on my knees because I'm like always crawling around, and, her tail is the most expressive part of her, and she will interact with me with her tail. But it's like she's my slow down thing. She's not a thing, but she's just this constant reminder that like whatever you think you're doing is so important. There's an opportunity here for you to get a little like furry attention from me, but you have to like get on the floor and put your phone down and like watch me closely and like see what I'm up to. So it's like I will receive from her, but I can't just be like, give me what I want,
Yeah.
So it's subtle. It's like, she's actually, I feel like very, she's like an externalization of a part of me. I mean, she's also her own being that I recognize as like sovereign and, not a projection of me. But, yeah, I love her so, so much. So yeah, I'm practicing the relationship that we're having with each other.
That's fabulous.
What or who are you listening to right now?
Well, I've been listening to the water. I live right on the creek, so I'm really listening to the water as these storms come and go. I'm listening to the birds a lot. I had an Akashic reading a couple of months ago, and it was really made clear to me that the birds have a lot to say to me and want me to sort of listen to them and communicate with them a little bit, So I guess that's a practice also. I'm listening to a couple of podcasts. One is this Jungian Life, which I know you know. I've been listening to it for a long time now, and that just feeds right into my brainy need to stay connected to the spiritual, and then volley it back to the brain, and then kick it over to the spiritual. And I'm listening to this podcast called Strike Force 5, which is hilarious. It's the 5 gentlemen who have late night talk shows, but they're not doing any of that now because of the writer's strike. So they've developed a podcast where all of the money that they raise goes back to their staff. And it's very light. It's not political. It's not really about anything except just listening to these 5 comedians talk. So that, I look forward to that on Thursdays because it's a good laugh. How about you?
I love your combo of the human and non-human. Are there any particular birds that you're in relationship with? Like, yeah, particular kinds of birds?
Well, there's a couple of blue jays that are being like super obnoxious. The chickadees are still around. Their frenetic sound, it's like forever. And there's a pileated woodpecker in the front of the house that I'm trying to appreciate it, but I don't really like it very much.
Because
it doesn't sound nice to me. Like it's not a pleasing sound. And it's reminding me that tree is dead, and I really love that tree. That's like a grief. I'm like, I know, let's not talk about it,
Yeah.
Keeps talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like pileated woodpeckers look like dinosaurs to me. To me, they look so ancient. Like,
yes,
I see the dinosaur connection in them.
Wow. Yes.
What am I listening to? Definitely the birds, definitely the wind. I have, trees on my property, and it's like today has been windy. And so at first I was like, is it raining? And it was just the leaves, making their sound. And just that, the insect sounds, it's like on its way out. It's like the tail end. So I really have been like listening in so poignantly to that. It's such a, I'm listening to a couple audiobooks. I just started Barbara Kingsolver's Flight Behavior. I finished Demon Copperhead, the audiobook, and it was like amazing. I'm like, okay, what else? And shout out to the library for, audiobooks that, I don't have to pay for. And I'm taking a class with Perdita Finn called Time Travelers, and we're reading a bunch of books this year. And this month we're reading The Alphabet versus the Goddess by Leonard Shlain. And so I'm listening to that because this totally kind of, not common book is available also through the library.
Wow.
So I've been listening to that. And his thesis is basically like, with the rise of a phonetic alphabet and alphabetic literacy, there was a concurrent rise in patriarchy and misogyny. And the book he like lays out his case. It's super interesting. I'd read it a few years ago, and, and reading it for this class, it's a chance to hear a lot of just like, it's a chance to like, it's a different way of like, it'd be interesting to have like a world history class, a high school world history class that was just reading this book, because it takes you through all these different like civilizations and their origin myths and so on. I mean, I'm not co-signing 100% to everything this person says. I don't do that with anyone. And I think the thesis is super interesting. So that's a long story about what I'm listening to. Okay. What are you reading right now?
Well, I'm not a very good reader in that I don't read a book one at a time. So I wrote down what I'm reading because they all are on my bed. So I sleep with them, and it's just whatever one gets picked up or that the dog hasn't knocked over. I'm reading The Art of Solitude. I think I'm reading this for the second time, maybe. The Untethered Soul, a good one. I'm reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which I've been reading for a long time because I just love it so much. I'm really just trying to pull it along. I'm reading Stanley Tucci's book cookbook because I have such a crush on that guy, and
Same.
I can't even look at the back cover sometimes. I'm like, whew, like I just have to keep it over there. And I like his recipes, and I really love traveling to Italy. So it also it's just soft and like fluffy all the way around. And I love the magazine The Sun.
Oh yeah.
So I just read it all the time, all the time, all the time, like again and again and again. And and I have it. I don't like things to read things online or however, like through a Kindle. So I just have all these magazines all over the place, and that's just like, you know, a conversation with somebody all the time. I don't know. I love reading that magazine.
I do too. I had something published in Reader's Right in the Sun many,
You
many years
did?
ago. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is a dream of mine to have a poem or something, anything in there, anything.
I love
That's
that
amazing.
magazine. I'm glad to hear about Stanley Tucci's cookbook because that was a heavy reading list you got going on there, you know?
Yeah, I know. I gotta, yeah, it's one of
That's
those things where
fine.
like, you don't want to tell anybody what you're reading. She's like, well, I guess you're really worried about this or that. Or, oh, I see. You're like, oh, I'm working it out.
No, I love what you say about like, isn't every conversation about life and death and grief? And I'm like, I'm over here like, isn't it? You know, and apparently like it's not, but it is for yeah, people like us.
Sure.
Um, I love all of that. I want to give a shout out to my friend Perdita Finn. Her
Yeah.
book Take Back the Magic arrived yesterday in the mail. And the subtitle is Conversations with the Unseen World. And as many people know, I've been working with her for almost 3 years now in the work that she does working with the dead. And I love that the book is out because it is her framework in like a form that like people can just read so that if you're if you have the chance to work with her, I like highly recommend. And also like if you don't, like the book is an incredible distillation of her teachings
Wow.
about working with the dead. So I'm super proud of her and happy for her. And
That's great.
hope it sells so many copies that like I am in Target and see it in there for sale. That's would
Right
be
on.
amazing. I'm also, what am I also reading? I also have a stack of like, I said I read like I browse the internet. I just have like books everywhere.
Yes.
I will say Taschen had its yearly sale and I bought a bunch of like, you know, it's not like reading, it's like literally looking at the pictures. And so I'm really enjoying just like picking that up from time to time. I got a bunch of different things, but
Wow.
looking at patterns and maps and just things that kind of uh, aren't words.
Hmm.
Yeah, all the time. I
That's
realize
great.
I listen to more of my books than I read them, actually.
When do you listen to them? Like when you're in the car or in the
Sometimes
garden or
when I'm in the car, when I mow the lawn, and then when I'm cooking and when I'm making art, so I might be at my art table for, a few hours at a time. And so I'll just like have it on and listen.
I can never do that. Like whenever I'm in the ceramic studio, I'm a member of the Kingston Ceramic Studio and I'm working on my own here. I can't even listen to like Philip Glass or any like other beautiful sounds that I love. I I can't do two things at once. Like I can't.
I
Or when I'm
love
cooking,
that.
oh my gosh, if I'm not paying attention all the way, everything becomes soup. You know, like I just overcook everything, and I'm not. I admire that you can do that. You can move and listen, or create and listen. I have zero
It's
ability.
nothing to admire. I think, we're just wired differently. And also like, I spent so many years like undistracted. It feels nice to multitask a little bit.
Okay,
I
okay.
I also have to say, like, in terms of my art making, or, I listen to audiobooks when I crochet, is that a lot of that, what I'm listening to is feels like a medium in the artwork or the sweater or whatever, is that like, so I'm like pretty conscious of what I'm listening to. It's either like political stuff or spiritual stuff or, scientific stuff or whatever, but like that becomes like an infusion in the work.
That's great. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'll try it
Yeah.
again. That's interesting.
Yeah, like I was reading Black Marxism while I was like crocheting my comrade's baby blanket for her new baby that was coming. And it was sort of like,
Wow.
you know, It's in there.
Yeah, that's juicy. That's great.
Yeah. What are you watching right now?
Um, but I don't really watch TV or Netflix or stuff like that. Like sometimes a series will blow through, but I don't really have a practice of watching TV. I try and because I want to talk to people about the stuff that is interesting to them and cool, but it doesn't happen. So I'm watching the river also, still trying to swim every day, or at least dunk in every day if I can. I was talking to Che, my middle son, about it, and he said, "You could say you're watching your language." Like, yeah, I guess I'm always watching my language. Okay,
Ah,
fine.
I love that.
Um, Watching time, like really very, very conscious of my time and these children grow time, just time as its own contemplation. Um, I'm watching my friends get older and change and you know, I think my vision's a little funny. Like I should probably be wearing glasses and I don't. So I'm watching how I'm seeing things. Like, yeah.
I love all of that so much better than TV. I don't
What
really
about
watch
you?
I don't really watch TV either, although our mutual friend has gotten me hooked on a few series, which I was not disappointed with. So I just want to
Yes,
say,
I watched those series that you recommended also. Yeah, yeah, they're good.
yeah, they are, I mean, she's very discerning tastes. Um, what am I watching? So I'm watching the leaves on the trees out, that are on the property I live on, especially the one that I can see from my bedroom window. I'm like, is this what the leaves look like last year? They look kind of,
Mm,
I just like watch them. I worry about them a little bit. I feel,
yeah, yeah.
I realize as I'm saying that, I'm like, am I externalizing my climate fear onto the maple tree that's at the border of my property? Maybe, but I
Mm,
got my eye on that tree. Um, I'm watching the light. I'm watching how the light is moving throughout the day and into different parts of the house and how the plants are responding to that.
yeah,
I'm also always watching like the creek and, the birds. I take my walk every morning and just watching the slow, like you said, everything is still green, but it's not the same green as it
yeah,
was in August. It's a different thing. And so watching, I feel like every year that I am blessed to have another life, on this in this particular lifetime, I feel very like I'm making close observations of how the seasons change and how much
yeah.
I
Me too.
love there being four seasons here, at least right now. What
Yeah, moment of
question?
silence for that. But that
Yeah,
actually might just like that's already slipping into a different pattern. I really feel that.
yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
What question are you living into right now?
Oh, I need you to go first on this one.
So I've been, so this was a question that I mentioned in my book, Tarot is Questions, that the astrologer Weston Minnesally asked me uh, when he did my natal chart reading, which is, have you let yourself get as weird as you want to be? And I feel like that's a question. I had a reading, a tarot reading with Saray Jarrell Johnson, who's based in Woodstock. The reading happened over Zoom and it was incredible. Just want to say, shout out and, see them for a tarot consultation. Incredible. And after that tarot consultation, I was reminded of that question, have I let myself get as weird as I want to be? And so I guess like, how weird do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
What is weird to me
Mm-hmm.
for me? Because I don't think I thought of myself as weird, but I increasingly do. And so I think I'm living into the question of my weirdness right now. Yeah.
That's fabulous. Mine just feels more practical than that. I'm still trying to figure out. I feel oriented towards being curious. being curious and figuring out just how I want to spend the time that I have, this gift of time. Like I was saying, it's 3 boys, but 2 of them are living abroad right now, one for an extended period of time, one for shorter, but it really turned me upside down with how I sleep and eat and when and why, and just I'm not at the mercy of caring for them, and so I'm like still a little bit of a blowback of like, oh, what am I doing? And so maybe it's just more like my question is like, what am I doing? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, what am I doing with my time? That's a
What am I
profound
doing?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, practical and also deeply existential,
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
What is keeping you up at night?
The planet most of the time is a worry that I can't say enough Hail Marys to, pass out around. I can often put myself back to sleep by praying, but that one just is not as forgiving. That's like it's pretty serious keeper upper. Um, Sometimes I'm so in love with the sound of the water and the sound of the wind, like I don't want to fall asleep because I just love hearing it, and
Mm,
I just feel like it's just so tasty that I just want to keep. So I kind of fight sleep sometimes,
mm.
and something's good like that.
Yeah, I relate to that
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, the planet's always keeping me up at night. And also, what's keeping me up at night is the Stop Cop City situation. I just want to say that
Mm-hmm.
the RICO indictments of the Cop City protesters should chill people to the bone. They're criminalizing mutual aid, solidarity, you know, people taking care of each other. They're making that the state is trying, a democratic city is trying to make that criminal activity. And it has an impact on every single one of us everywhere outside of
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta, where it's, happening on the ground. And I'm really thinking about that all the time. That particular struggle feels like a firewall. It feels like that feels so, so, so critical to stop Cop City. And I believe they're going to do it. Actually, to move into what's inspiring me now is the people on the ground
Mm-hmm.
um, who are on the front line of that struggle, putting their bodies in the way of construction equipment and being sent to jail, and other people being arrested and criminalized, and all the people carrying boxes of 160,000 petitions signed, to get Stop Cop City on the ballot. And just the people who are organizing this struggle they're really with me all the time. I think about them every day, and
Mm-hmm.
they are inspiring me because they're fighting for the forest down there. They're fighting for their communities to not have a militarized police training facility in the middle of them. And they're really fighting for all of us because what happens there is going to be exported everywhere if it happens. So they are inspiring me with their creativity, with their affirming of life, with their the way they take care of each other. It's just beautiful. It's like a horrific thing and a beautiful thing at the same time. Yeah. What's
Well, and there
inspiring
we go.
you?
Right. Well, what's inspiring me now is, again, situations like this conversation. When I see my friends activating in their lives and finding things that they're passionate about, when my friends come home from a day of like volunteering, or discovering that they have another passion and how they want to be connected to the world, or when something pains them so much that we all move towards being more than just curious about it, like people living and people showing up. I'm constantly inspired by that. I kind of need to be. I really need to feel like that underground humming and heat of humanity like that, So more specifically than that, I'm not so sure. I mean, it's I don't know. The kids going back to school really inspires me, like that teachers are still doing this good work. I was talking to a friend yesterday who said that, and she's a junior in high school, and she said that the teachers don't demand that they take their smartphones away, so that all of the kids are just looking at their phones, and the teachers say things like, just give me your attention for a couple of seconds, like as if they're borrowing this time. I'm very inspired that we haven't given up on the educational, that we're still trying, that we're still working amidst, like, that's a great force. As a mother, that's a great force that's competing with, our children's minds. Yeah, seeing the communities of people that want to, take care of them and educate them, fighting that. So very, very different, but just really important.
So important. What has your attention right now?
What's my attention? Well, I'm about to start a new class, and so it has a little bit of some heavy reading. So I feel like I'm kind of gearing up for that class and revving the engine of paying attention to being a student again in that way.
Is it shareable what you're going to be doing?
I'm taking a class that my Jungian analyst is giving about Jung and working, working with others. I can't quite recall the title of it right now, which is deeply embarrassing. But I went to Rough Draft yesterday, like with a list of the books to purchase, and realized this is not too big of a bite, but I will have my mouth full. This is gonna. So that has my attention. I'm nervous. I'm excited. Hungry for it. So
I love that. Buying course books is so
love
delicious.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has my attention right now? I think following that tarot reading that I mentioned, I think something that has my attention is naughtiness.
Mm.
Naughtiness. Being naughty. Yeah, just has my attention. It's just,
Wow.
again, like what is that? What is naughty? And like, can I give that to myself?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a fun thing to have my attention, of all the things that could have my attention,
That's a
naughtiness.
great one.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll take it for now. How are you evolving right now?
I mean, how am I not? You know, like exactly. We get to do that too. Yeah. I'm learning to not like shame myself over things. Some of it's still real basic, you know, woman, female or mother, all of that sort of labeling stuff that just has that wonderful pressure of suppression on top of it. So yeah, I don't know. There's lots.
Well, I mean, that feels
I think,
extremely important, and like blessed be for that.
yeah.
What a great way to be evolving. I think one way that I'm evolving is coming to terms with something that has like been true for me for a while, and I've only recently been able to like articulate it to myself. And so I feel like I'm evolving into like accepting it, which is that I can be quite fierce about protecting the shape of my life. And that has a lot of impacts and effects on other people and other things. And uh, it has, kind of cured me of like being likable or a good person because it's transcends that. Like when you were talking about time earlier and like watching time, and it's like I feel very let me say this. I feel like one of the things that you and I worked on during the time that we did grief walking together has something to do with, what would I be pushing against if I weren't pushing against interpersonal conflict and drama.
Oh,
And I feel like I have I've arrived in a meadow of my life where where I have some space and I can use that kind of pushing, refining, testing energy in for my creative work. And I feel very fierce about anything that kind of leaks that.
mm,
And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's an evolution, but I feel like that's a place where I feel like there's a growth edge there for me of just it's not like I'm becoming this person who, it's like I already am this person. The evolution is like accepting that that is true about me,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
I cannot thank you enough for articulating that so well. You just relieved so much of this general nausea that I've been having for the past like 4 or 5 months. That's just where my anxiety and like something's up sits as like nausea. That's yes, yes. I'm still learning to recognize that in myself. I mean, hearing you say it, I'm like, that's the light. That's it. Um, because it's still my struggle within that is still very externally based. So maybe that's why my first answer was shame, because I'm starting to break things around me, and I have projected feelings about that, and I have old dusty feelings that aren't really things that I'm actually feeling anymore, but they're called feelings, so I don't know what else to say about them or what else to call them, but they need to move out of the way as things change, right? And the meadow is a beautiful, beautiful image. That is,
Well, because it's not gonna last forever necessarily. I don't know, I'm in a clearing for the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it feels so right sized. Those two words just feel right sized, right? Like very
Yes.
palatable, that
Yeah.
image, and
Like it
whatever
doesn't,
size that,
yeah, it doesn't have to be like to slash and burn a whole forest. It can just be, you
or
know,
as far as the eye can see, or
right.
anything like that. It is this space. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you. I mean, was this not delicious? I knew it would be.
Yeah, thanks for keeping the faith there.
Oh my gosh. Thank
I
you.
love you so much.
I love you so much too. Thank you so much for taking the time, my love.
Thank you. Really, such a pleasure. I learned so much.
Same.